So several years ago, I started experiencing really bad anxiety. And this kind of came out of the blue. I didn't know what anxiety was at the time. And it was absolutely terrifying for me because I had no systems in place to deal with that. And it was really the fear of the unknown that was the biggest issue. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with anxiety, I'm sure most of you have a sense of what it is, but let me just give you a brief overview. Basically, anxiety can be very physical. Imagine that you were about to jump out of a plane with a parachute on. Okay, your body would be you would have some very physical symptoms within your body. You're likely to express that fear through maybe a dry throat, shaking hands, a racing heartbeat, and you might feel sick and nervous. You have adrenaline racing through your veins. And that's perfectly normal. That's what happens when you do scary things. If a bear suddenly appeared in your living room, you would also have that, adrenaline response. And this is called fight or flight. And it's something that has kept us alive as a species for thousands of years. It's helped us to survive and to navigate the dangers. But what can happen with this system is in the modern world, sometimes it can break and sometimes it can be ineffective. And what happens is I started experiencing all of this adrenaline without the cause. There was no cause. There was nothing that had happened to really cause this that I could sense. It wasn't clear what was going on. So I just had all of these symptoms, these very physical symptoms, as if I was about to do something very, very scary. And it was very physical. So I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was dying, to be honest. It was a very, very, very scary experience. So to learn how to manage this and to try and figure out what was going on, I went to the doctor, and the doctor instantly recognized it as anxiety. But for me, I was a little unsure. I still couldn't believe that my mind was creating all of these physical symptoms. So I started this ridiculous quest to try and understand what was happening to me. So I began reading all about philosophy and self-help and psychology and about mental health and all of these different things to try and understand my mind better. And it turns out the doctor was correct, and it was definitely anxiety that I was experiencing. But it was during this time when I started reading extensively that I discovered a lot of ideas that really helped me. And some of these philosophies were based on ancient ideas. So, for instance, the Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece and Rome really inspired me. And they would do this thing where they would deliberately step outside of their comfort zones in order to build resilience. And they would do this in weird and wonderful ways. They would fast from food and water. They would expose themselves to the cold and the heat. And they would deliberately sleep on hard surfaces so that they could endure the discomfort. They used to have really, really physical activities that they would do, basically just, challenge themselves as much as possible in all these different ways. They would even wear strange clothes so that they could embarrass themselves publicly and learn how to deal with the shame of that. So this was very interesting, and I really connected to this idea. I thought this was very unusual for me, as something that I felt would be difficult for me to actually do all of these things, considering how I was in such a bad space with my mental health. So I decided to actually test out these ideas, to start stepping outside of my comfort zone. And this was very counterintuitive at the time because I was in such a bad space. And right at the beginning, these challenges that I started doing were very small. They were inspired by the Stoics, like some of the things I started to do, cold exposure and whatnot. But at the beginning, it was very small. So walking to the local bench in my park, it wasn't very far away, but this was a challenge. And I wanted to see if doing these things would actually help me to regain my confidence and to understand more about what was going on with my mind and how to manage my anxiety. So pushing through that fear. And over time, I started doing more and more. And my confidence came back, and I started to believe in myself again. I started to be able to do more interesting things and bolder things. And over time, this accumulated, and I started doing more crazy things like ice baths and running marathons and all of these interesting things. I learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube very quickly, and I started learning Japanese, and I started pushing myself out of my comfort zone in all these different ways. And the effect it had on my life was very profound. It completely changed everything for me. It changed the way I viewed the world, and it changed the way that I interacted with the world. And it completely altered my anxiety and allowed me to manage it in a better way. I understood myself better from this. So to document all of this, I started writing, and I wrote my first book about this experience. It's called How to Be Comfortable with Being Uncomfortable: 43 Weird and Wonderful Ways to Build a Strong, Resilient Mindset. And this book was a very personal account of some of the things that I did. And this came out a couple of years ago. It came out 2020. And it was lovely to launch this and to hear all of these different stories from readers and how they're getting involved in the challenges. But this book came out in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of chaos, and the factories were closed and warehouses were closed and bookstores were closed and everything was kind of all over the place. So it was an interesting time for this book to come out. But because it's about resilience and it's talking about how we can deal with that, how we can build resilience, it felt like it was quite a relevant time for it to come out. And I've certainly had some lovely messages from people and connected to people who've been using this method in their lives, and they've been using it to help build a strong mind. And the thing about all of this is that you know where to go to train your body. You can basically go running, or you can go to the gym. I mean, there's a bazillion different exercises you can do, but where do you go to train your mind? And that's really the purpose of all of this, all of these different challenges. So to take this further, and how I took the idea from my first book and developed it, I created this deck of challenge cards. And this is my second project. This came out a couple months back. And I've really enjoyed working on this. It's been a lot of fun. So the deck of cards is called Get Out of Your Comfort Zone: 60 Challenge Cards to Build a Strong, Resilient Mindset. And the theme is very similar to the first book, where it's based on challenges to build resilience. But this is challenge based. The challenges in this deck are instantaneous. So some of the things that I was saying about in my book, they're longer. They take a bit more time. So these challenges are very much about the user and how you can get involved with them, and you can do them instantly. So this is what they look like. I'm really pleased with how they came out. It's really exciting to have them, and there's loads of different categories. Each color represents a different category, and these challenges are things that can be done straight away. You don't need any money to do them. You can just pick a card from the deck and you can instantly do it. And really, that was the thought process behind creating this deck. I wanted to create something that users or readers could actually instantly do. With my first book, it was a bit more engaged, and it was about creating these bigger challenges. This is more of a springboard. So by completing some of these challenges, you will be able to use it as a springboard to go on and do bigger and bolder things as well. So that's really the purpose of it. And it's been really fun for this to be launched, and it's very exciting getting feedback from different people who've been using it, kind of like a game as well. There was an icebreaker at work, and there's lots of different things. And I know some therapists have been using this as a way to help their patients come up with some ideas that they could stretch themselves. So it's really nice to hear how it's being used in the world. And I think the key is really to be able to test out everything. And that's really one of the key themes in my work, is that, we want to have some kind of philosophical understanding of stuff and then go and test it out in the real world with practical challenges and things. All this theory doesn't mean anything unless you actually use it. So the purpose of these challenges is to really get out there and start testing it. So I'm going to share with you my favorite challenges from my new deck of cards, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I've been doing it and how you can have a go. So I'll go through the categories one by one, and then it will sort of make sense at that stage. So the first category is the courage category. Those are the green cards. So this is all about doing things that embarrass you. So making yourself feel self-conscious, maybe feeling a bit silly, and working on that internal dialogue. When we do something that's embarrassing, it's very easy to have that negative dialogue in our minds, and we can be very self-critical. So deliberately doing things that are embarrassing helps us to challenge that. And the point is to challenge that voice in our heads when we're doing all of this stuff. And this comes from ancient philosophy. The Cynic philosophers of ancient Greece used to do this. They would embarrass themselves, and they trained the Stoic philosophers. So you can see, as I mentioned earlier, that some of the Stoics would deliberately wear outrageous things to feel embarrassed so that they can practice overcoming that embarrassment. So this is really what this whole category is about, and I've had a lot of fun doing this. So this is my favorite challenge from the courage category. It's walk backwards. So the cards, they've been broken down into different sections, so it tells you what the challenge is and how to do the challenge. So this first one is go for a backwards walk. This is something you can try yourself straight away. It's very easy to do, but if you do it in a public place by yourself, not with friends, just by yourself, go for a backwards walk, it's very embarrassing. It feels really quite difficult. For me, it did anyway. For some people, you'd find it easy. But what's difficult is that when you're walking backwards, someone's walking towards you, they're watching you the whole time, and then they overtake you because you can't actually walk very fast when you walk backwards. So I did this all the way through Hyde Park. I walked backwards through the whole of Hyde Park, and I felt very self-conscious. And that was a great thing because I had to really talk to myself and say, why are you so worried about doing this? It's not that bad, but it's this fear of being judged by others. So challenging that is a really interesting thing to play around with. And the backwards walk is actually an exercise the Cynic philosophers of ancient Greece used to do. They would walk backwards, and they would actually deliberately walk into crowds of people backwards so that they could practice managing that, which is kind of funny and bizarre. So the next category of challenge in my deck of cards is the creative category. So I like this category because it's encouraging you to think how you could creatively push yourself out of your comfort zone. And it's encouraging you to think in different ways, because obviously there's loads of conventional ways you can leave your comfort zone. You do something scary, but this is more about pushing it in different directions, looking for different ways, unique ways to challenge yourself. So the creative category is filled with things about creating works of art and writing and all this kind of stuff. But my favorite challenge is the world's weirdest sandwich. So what we've got to do is create a sandwich that's very unusual, preferably something disgusting, and then eat it. And the purpose is to work again on that internal dialogue and to really get over your perception of discomfort. So it's a little bit of like discomfort exposure. So by making yourself do something that's a bit gross, bit uncomfortable, like that can be very interesting to explore in your mind as you're doing it. Think about what it is that's so unpleasant about it. It's just food. Why do these combinations make me feel sick? So I've played around with different types of food and eating strange things, and it is a mind game. It's very much what goes on in your head. I really hate Marmite. I know it's just like an obvious thing. People have a problem with Marmite, but I really dislike it. So I made a Marmite pizza and forced myself to eat it, just to work on my mind as I was doing it. And it's an interesting exercise, and we can have a lot of fun with this. And I think it's something that you can do with friends. So this is, again, something you can instantly do. Go and find some weird food. Try something that you used to hate as a child. See if you can use it as a way to build resilience. So the next category is the concentration category. And this is about focus and about being able to look at things in detail and basically just it's the opposite of the courage challenge, really, which I think extroverts would find the courage challenge quite easy, but maybe they would find the concentration challenge slightly harder. I mean, this is just, obviously that's generalizing, but what I'm trying to get at is that different people's personalities find different challenges challenging. So it's seeing how you respond to basically sitting and doing something boring or whatnot. So for example, this concentration challenge is the phone detox. So it's spending some time away from your phone, and I did 3 days away from my phone quite recently, and it was an amazing experience. Now this doesn't have to be 3 days, but it's just bringing an awareness to that and looking at how your mind works when you remove tech and you remove all of these distractions that we have with our phones. They can just be so all consuming. So I think that the phone detox exercise is really powerful and it's very interesting. But again, it's about concentration, and it's an interesting exercise to play around with. The next category is the skill category. And my favorite challenge from the skill category is pen spinning. So I don't have a pen to hand, but actually I've started to learn how to spin a pen. And okay, it's not a huge challenge. This isn't something that, it's not like running a marathon, but the point is it's a little skill. And by doing something that's unfamiliar, you're having to use your brain in a new way. You're having to learn new things. And this can push you a little bit. And these ideas compound. So the more you test yourself with different skills, the better you're going to get. So pen spinning is something that I've had a lot of fun with, and that's one of the skill category challenges. The next category is physical. So the physical challenges are very fun and they're very physical. So it's kind of obvious really how that works. You just have to do something very physical, and that's a great way to push yourself out of your comfort zone. So my favorite one from this category is the push-up challenge. So you have to create a personal best, a push-up personal best. So it's very physical, seeing how many you can do and then trying to beat it at a later stage. So I've been doing that. I've been working towards, I'm trying to get to 100. It's very hard to do that in one go without taking a break. So I've got to 70. That's my record so far. But spending time developing this is a great challenge. It's something very physical and something that can be instantly done. So that's how that one works. And then the final category is discomfort. And this is all about making yourself uncomfortable. By doing this, you become better at being uncomfortable. So the more you do things that push you out of your comfort zone and make you feel a bit uncomfortable, the easier it is for you to manage discomfort. So this exercise, my favorite one, is called sleeping on the floor without a mattress, without anything. So you've got your bed here and then the floor, just sleep on it without a pillow, without a mattress. And this is something the Stoics used to do. They used to deliberately sleep on hard surfaces so that they could train being uncomfortable and getting used to it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it's just, we live very comfortable lives. So injecting a little bit of discomfort helps us to build resilience. This is a great way to build resilience. Now, there's tons of other things I've been doing. Some of my other favorite challenges. So those are the categories. Here are some more. Some of my other favorite ones. There's the cold exposure. This is great because basically just get cold, have a cold shower, have an ice bath, go wild swimming. This is very good. It's mental because getting into cold water can be very painful, but also it's just that mind over matter, like forcing yourself into the cold. It's a very powerful exercise. Another great exercise is clock watching. So this is a concentration one where you watch the second hand go around the clock for 20 minutes. And this is all about focus and dealing with boredom, because boredom can make us uncomfortable. So by exposing ourselves to discomfort, again, we get better at managing it. Okay, the next one that I really enjoy, well, I say enjoy, this is a difficult one. The courage category is become a comedian. So go and tell a stranger a joke. And this is actually really awkward. If you stop someone in the street to say, oh, do you want to hear a joke? And then you tell them a joke, it can be really, really awkward. So I've had some interesting experiences off the back of that. Another one is meditation. So this is a concentration one. And that's a bit more conventional, I guess. So learning how to meditate, making sure that you pay attention to your mind as you sit still and you basically pay attention to what's going on around you. Another skill that I really enjoyed was learning the longest word in English, which is pneumono ultramicroscopic silicovolcanoconiosis. It's a lung condition, very unusual, but little skills like this can challenge you. And then really, this is all about creating ideas. So one of the other things that I enjoy and encourage people to do is to create their own challenges. So this deck is all about inspiring ideas. The categories help you to think in certain ways, but really the purpose is to get you inspired to start thinking about your own comfort zone. How can you step out of it? We're all different, so different things will challenge us in different ways. So it's really interesting to explore and to play around with that and think about how you could create your own challenges based on the things that scare you in your life, the things that you know would make you uncomfortable. So it's a very powerful exercise and you can have a lot of fun with it. So to think about this in a philosophical way, for me, I wasn't prepared for the anxiety that just came out of nowhere. And the future is very uncertain for all of us. We don't know what's around the corner. So the idea of building resilience for a future scenario that we're unsure of is something that makes sense. It's a good investment. The Stoics would say we prepare for adversity by practicing adversity. So by training our minds, by training our bodies to do things that are difficult and to experience a bit of discomfort, can help us to build resilience, which helps us to handle the curveballs that come along, because life is filled with lots of different curveballs and lots of different challenges that we all have to face. So I think it's important to consider what we can do to be prepared. So this type of challenging yourself to do all this different stuff is a great way to prepare for the future and to prepare for life. And it's kind of, I see it as training. So all of these different challenges that I've been doing have really had a huge impact on my life. They've helped me to manage my anxiety. They've helped me to understand myself better. And they've also brought color back into my life. Things were very black and white when I was in my very anxious space. My life was very small. And doing all of this different stuff has allowed me to step out of my comfort zone and actually bring color back into my life and to do all of these different interesting things. And they compound over time. The more you do these things, the better you become at basically getting out there and stepping outside of the things that stepping outside your comfort zone. You become more confident, and it's a very powerful experience. So I've got a lot from doing this, and I think it can be a lot of fun, this training. So the one thing I would say when you're doing all of this is the kind of golden rule that has really got me through whenever I've faced a challenge is focusing on the growth mindset kind of thing. So whenever I do something, I want to look at what I can take away from the experience. So if something doesn't go to plan, I can still learn a lot from that experience. I can still take away from it. I can look at the things that went wrong and I can try and learn from it so that it doesn't happen again. If things go well when I'm doing a challenge, then that's great because I can basically build on that for next time. So I think having some kind of system to deal with whatever comes up in life and whatever challenges present themselves is very good. And this attitude of the growth mindset, whatever happens, always look for the lesson. This is going to give value to absolutely everything that you encounter. And this can be very, very helpful. So whether it's a specific challenge that you've chosen to do or something that crops up in life, this attitude is something that can benefit all of us. It's something that I try and remind myself if I'm in a pickle, if I'm dealing with something difficult. The idea of looking for the lesson brings value to everything, even all the bad stuff. So hopefully that's given you a sense of how these cards work, how my first book has inspired me to create the cards. So it's kind of like a natural stepping stone. And really this project is all about encouraging people to think what they can do as individuals to step outside of their comfort zones. So I think that there's a lot to be done with this. I've had some fantastic messages from people. I really enjoy that. Someone once sent me a very strange picture. The picture came through, it was just them, just some guy maybe in his 50s, just in Speedos, nothing else. And I was like, okay, what's this? And then the message came in and he was like, oh, I've just read your book and I read about doing something uncomfortable, wearing something ridiculous and going into a busy public place. So he's like, this is what I've been wearing and I've just gone through a run through the center of my town. It was really embarrassing, but he got a lot out of the experience, a lot of growth, a lot of challenging that internal dialogue. So I really like that example of someone using it in a very practical way. So it's all about testing the ideas. I think it's important, that marriage of theory and practicality. So that's really why I try and bring these two things together. And I think we can all benefit from that because it's very easy to not step outside of your comfort zone, get too comfortable. Life can be very unpredictable. So it does make sense to to at least try to have some system in place so that when when you get the curveballs, you're a little bit more prepared. I've done pretty much everything. Some of the harder categories. So each, for instance, let me give you just an example, right? So um, one challenge, okay, it goes through what you need to do for the challenge, how to do it, and then there's a harder category. So I haven't done all of the harder ones. I'm working towards trying to complete all of the difficult ones, but some of them are pretty hard. As I said with the push-up one, that's particularly difficult, getting to 100 push-ups in one go. So that's something that is ongoing. But surprisingly, the backwards walk, I found that really, really difficult mentally. I've said that it's easy on the cards, and because it technically is, but personally, I mean, the category that I find the most challenging is the courage category, because I'm an introvert. So the thought of deliberately embarrassing myself is something that I find hard. So, for instance, another challenge is taking a selfie with a stranger and without giving them context and just saying, can I get a picture with you? It's very weird. And when I've done this, I've got some very strange reactions. But again, it's all about pushing myself to think, why does it matter? Why do you care so much? And actually, to be fair, the more you do this, the better you get at it. So I'm becoming less easily embarrassed, which is which is a good thing, I think. So yeah, that's the category that challenges me the most, I think. I think it's just having a list, having that bucket list can be very, very inspiring. Having the physical list, write down what it is that you want to do. And as soon as you start ticking them off the list, that's where you get momentum. And momentum can really help you to actually make progress with all of this. And it doesn't have to be, have to be religious about it, but I think it's just actually going out there, doing a few of them, and it does pick up. The momentum picks up, and then you'll be able to, you know, build on that and go and do crazy things. And before you know it, you'll be doing ridiculous stuff and lots of it. So I think that's it. Just start the ball rolling, and when you get that feedback loop, when you see that actually, okay, I can do it, and you see that there's progress, then that will help with motivation and momentum. So that's probably my recommendation. Because if you leave it for too long, if it's been a while, yeah, it's easy to kind of let it slip. And I feel that, when I'm looking for challenges, I find that if I haven't done anything for a while, it's easy to that becomes magnetic, and you just think, oh, okay, I haven't done anything for a while. So actually putting things in the calendar, being deliberate, and thinking about what it is you want to do and queuing it up, that's very helpful. So at the start of the book, I talk about my experience with anxiety, and it came out of nowhere, but it actually hit me when we were in America on a road trip. I live in the UK, so this was my wife and I. We were traveling in the States, and we were doing this big road trip from California into the desert to Las Vegas and to the Grand Canyon. And the whole trip, I just thought I had really bad jet lag, and because I felt so ill, so sick the whole time. And then we went on this this ridiculous drive to the Grand Canyon. And I don't know if any of you have ever done this. It's actually quite far. It takes a long time. And some of the roads, you get on the road and there's no petrol station for miles and miles and miles, and it's just this like dual carriageway just forever. And it feels like there's nowhere for you. There's nowhere for you to turn around a lot of the time, and you're just going through the desert. And I was just a bit of a wreck anyway. But we happened to, in the kind of middle of the desert, we came across this crazy storm, and it was a big electrical storm. And the road, you couldn't turn around, and it just basically went straight into the heart of the storm. And I mean, it wasn't a giant tornado, but it was like a proper electrical storm with like crazy lightning. And we just went through the middle of it, and I've just never been so scared. Anxiety plus like a crazy storm is not a good combination. I just remember going right through the middle, because they've got lightning rods all along the side of the road to catch the lightning so the cars don't get hit. And we went through this like kind of the center of it, and all the hairs on my body were just like sticking up, because you could feel the static in the air, because obviously in an electrical storm there's a lot of that static going around. So it was a crazy experience, and then we came out the other side, and yeah, I was just physically shaking from it. So really that that kind of pushed me over the edge a bit, and I found that was a real catalyst, and I don't know, it was a big moment, but it was, yeah, crazy experience. Out of all of them, I have to say the most, it's more of a compound effect, to be honest, because I don't think there's been one which has been the thing that changed everything for me. I think it's just been the accumulative effect of doing all of these different things, and I think over time, just searching for all of these different challenges, that has compounded, and it's really a collective thing. So I don't think it's not the straw that broke the camel's back kind of situation. I think it's more of the fact that, it builds up on everything. um One that really stands out is running my first marathon, I think, because that was physical and mental. It's something that you really have to push yourself physically, but also there's a moment where you hit, it's called the wall, at like mile 20, 21, where you just I can't do it, I can't do it, and it's that moment that you have to push through. And I think pushing through that is very interesting, and you learn a lot about yourself by doing that. I think the very physical, not extreme, I guess it is a kind of extreme, running a marathon, but it's not like an ultra marathon or anything like that, but it is pushing yourself physically and knowing that your mind can help you to get through that. I think that was a really powerful experience for me. Think it's being I guess it depends on your personality, who you are. Some people will want to push it, push it, push it, and I don't know. I think it's about balance and being conscious of that. I think it's important for all of us to find boundaries and to find where we can get to. We don't have to, it doesn't have to be dangerous, because I guess our comfort zone is, stepping outside of our comfort zone doesn't necessarily have to be dangerous, but it can push us, certainly. For instance, if you had a real problem with public speaking, slowly trying, and there's a thing called Toastmasters that you can sign up to, and they're like they're an organization, and you attend, and there's like 50 people, and then you take it in turns to give speeches, and the purpose is to get better at speaking in front of other people. And something like that would be very challenging for some people, and there might be a barrier, a mental barrier, that people wouldn't even want to try that. So I think it's just something like that. That that's a safe thing to do. There's no danger in that. So pushing through something like that is a great exercise mentally. For me, an example, one of the things I did recently that I really didn't want to do, well, I wanted to do it, but I had a huge thing around it, was giving blood. And that's taken a long time for me to actually get out there and do that, because I had a big problem with needles. To deal with that, I went and got acupuncture, but giving blood felt like it was the next step up. But deliberately going and doing that really helped with that barrier, pushing and learning that I can push myself to that point, and learning where your barrier is. And in physical sports as well, that's there's a lot to be said for that, and testing those boundaries. And obviously certain things can be dangerous, so it depends on your risk profile, but you're not going to go from complete novice, like never done anything, to you know like jumping out of a plane by yourself. You build, it's incremental. So although the end result might be quite extreme, if you see someone doing a climb that looks really scary, often it's not like they've gone from zero to that scary climb. It's like they've slowly over time built it up. So for them, that scary climb might just be a little bit out of their comfort zone, whereas for someone who's never done a climb before, that would be ridiculous. So I think it's just incrementally pushing yourself, and I think that's the most sensible way to do it. If you tried to go and climb Everest without any experience, then that would be silly. So it's finding that uh, barrier, but look for something that's more accessible. So I think that's probably the best way to approach all of this. I think we've got this society that it's very easy to be comfortable, and it's very easy to get stuck into that rut. I think it's important for all of us to not like just get stuck into that. I think you're completely right what you were saying. Life used to be a lot more challenging. Now everything's very convenient. You don't have to ever leave the house. Everything can come to you. And I think that you lose quite a lot if you live a life that has no risk at all, or no growth, or no challenge. You can live a very bland existence. And I think that all of this can help us to live more fulfilling lives, because ultimately, when we do things that are novel and new and that push us, we grow as human beings. And really, that's where a lot of satisfaction and meaning can come from. So I think it's important to push ourselves and push back against that, because it is very easy to never be cold. In Western societies as well, like, it's very easy to not be cold really, and not be too hot, and to not have to push ourselves. And I think we can learn a lot about ourselves if we do these things, if we do push back a little bit. Modern society is definitely convenient, and that's great, but I think there's a lot to be said for pushing back, because what can happen is, if you're too comfortable, then when something goes wrong, everything's a disaster and you can't handle anything. So I think that's why it's important to build that. That's really what resilience to me is all about: being able to, like, handle when life doesn't go to plan. And there's no escaping that life can be difficult and uncomfortable at times. So I think it's preparing for that and getting out there and having fun with it. Although it sounds like it's not that fun, but actually it's the process of seeing what you can achieve is very fun, and that the growth is what's fun, I think. Yeah, so the next book is completely about Stoicism. As I said earlier, Stoicism influenced me uh, profoundly. I really fell in love with this concept, this ancient Greek philosophy with all these wonderful concepts in it. And really, this new book is a tribute to that. This is all about the Stoic philosophy. So it's kind of like an introduction to Stoicism 101 in a way. And it's again packed with challenges, packed with very practical exercises that people can have a go at. This is more philosophical though than, say, actual physical exercises and challenges. So there are some physical things, but this is more contemplative. So I think that's really the purpose, to help people to understand that. And for me, it's been a lovely process of getting to know the philosophy in more detail. As I've been writing about it, I've been studying it and putting all of these concepts into one place. So I've learned so much doing that. So I'm really looking forward to that coming up. I think it's an inevitability. So whatever you do, there will be a point. If you're pushing yourself, you want to be finding that failure, because otherwise you know that you're not pushing yourself too much. So I think it's a natural part of life. To expect to go through life without ever encountering a failure is unrealistic. So first of all, getting that into your head that things will go wrong is important. But what matters is what you do afterwards. Everything can keep going wrong, but it's how you respond to it that's very important. So I think as long as you take a lesson away from everything you encounter, then it brings value to it. So when something terrible happens, look for the lesson. Look for the lesson from the failure. What can you take away from it? And then it gives it value, because you've taken away something that you can apply to your life, and hopefully it won't happen again in the future. But if you're close to that failure, then you're limiting yourself. There's a natural cap to everything. I think being open to failing is hugely important. Absolutely, I think it's really important to to do this, and I think it can help us grow. Growth is very important, and I think it's something that without it, as I said before, I think without this personal growth, it's very easy to feel stuck in life, and I think that momentum can be very helpful for people. I certainly found that, and I think that yeah, you're right what you're saying. This is something that I think is fun to explore and to learn about yourself in the process. So what you were pointing out as well, there's on the cards, there's actually some quotes that I've written as well. So you can, in a way, the deck can be used in lots of different ways, mainly for challenges, but also there's motivational quotes. But yeah, what you're saying is important. I think having an open mind is is something that can help us to not close everything off. I found that when I was in my very anxious space, the thing that really helped me was being open to ideas, open to things that could help me. If I was too stubborn to try anything, I think that would have just kept me enclosed in that space. So being open and trying things out. For me, the most important thing is trying it. Things might seem a bit crazy, ideas might be a bit crazy, but if you're not trying them out, you don't know them. You don't know that it's going to work for you, or it might not. So I think that's something that I always try and make sure that before I dismiss anything, I'll try it, or at least sort of contemplate it. If you're too closed before you've even done something, then I think you can miss out on a lot. Again, to go back to the giving blood example, my mind was very, at first I couldn't even think about it. It was a no. I was so closed to that idea. But actually over time, just opening, being a bit more open, just thinking about it, actually just spending some time around it in my mind, thinking about the whole process, actually changed my relationship with it, and being open and just slowly starting to think about it, being open to this as an idea, as a challenge as well, eventually meant that I could go and do that. So openness is important. I think it's something that we should all try and bring into our lives. I think it can be great. I think social media, if it's used in the right way, can be an amazing tool. I was very much, I didn't want to go on social media when I first started writing, but it was an important part, because otherwise people can't, it's a new thing. If you want to write, if you want to be able to share ideas, social media is an essential part of that. And I had to push myself. Again, this was a pushing myself out of my comfort zone to go and start publicly posting and writing about different things. So that process for me has been really great, and I really love doing it now. I really enjoy building that audience and connecting to people, and the feedback that you get through social media is great, and you can create a really nice space if you manage it well. So I really enjoy my social media because I've connected to some wonderful people through it, and it's a brilliant tool. Obviously it can be used in a very negative way, and you sometimes there'll be some weird people giving some strange horrible comments, but I'm quite lucky because I haven't really had a lot of that. I guess it depends on what kind of space you're in, but the bigger you get, the larger your audience, the larger your reach. Naturally, there's going to be a part of that, but that just comes with it. And I think it's just knowing that, that you're in control of that, and also the content that you consume is very important, because that is what gets reflected in the way you think. So if you're constantly consuming bad, toxic content, then you will change as a person because of what's going in. What comes in does come out. So if you're always looking at, I don't know, well, okay, here's an example. So as a kid, as a teenager, I used to play I used to watch zombie movies and play zombie video games all the time, and I just had a thing about zombies. Zombies are in the woods, like zombies would always be the thing that freaked me out. And that was just because I've been absorbing all of this zombie content, and then your mind starts to sort of bring that in. So whenever if I think about something scary, the first thing I think about is zombies. But it's only because I've been consuming so much zombie content. I've stopped that. But basically, your mind reflects what you put in. So you better make sure that you put in decent stuff, because otherwise, you're going to end up with this. You can end up thinking in a very dark and negative way, and the news cycle definitely doesn't help. So being conscious of that is important. But if you use social media well, then it can be very good. There's two things that really help. I think ideas, philosophy, studying things, tools and tricks and stuff like that. There's so many wonderful books out there that talk about things that you can actually use in your life. So looking at ideas from philosophy, ideas from psychology, there's so many things that you can use when dealing with problems and setbacks in the real world, and all of these things that you're going to encounter. So thinking about ideas is very helpful. Creating your own personal toolkit for managing difficulty is one thing I think people can invest time in. Reading, spending time in online, but in the right sort of way, looking at content that's going to help, giving you tools for pushing yourself out into the real world, and then starting small with small little stepping stone challenges. If you're feeling locked in, try and do something that's just a little bit outside of your comfort zone. Sign up for something that's not too crazy, but that's something different. And then just doing that dip your toe out, as you said, just try something small to start off with. And these things build and build and build. So actually, simply just going out and doing something very, very small for you might end up being a huge catalyst for very positive change. So for me, one of the first things I did was walk to the bench, my local bench, which was not very far away from the house. And that was a big deal. But then, now obviously that's not a problem at all. But at the time, it was very hard. But, that was the first step. And then you just go from there. So I think, yeah, try and do something that's appropriate for where you are in your life, and think about ideas that you can use when you're doing that. So that's the combination that I suggest. So the new book is out next month, 9th of June. It's called How to Control the Uncontrollable, and that's all about Stoic philosophy. And if you want to connect with me and my ideas, the best place to go is benaldridge.com. And that's got links to all of my social media channels. It's got a newsletter. I've got a monthly book club where I send out book recommendations and whatnot, and bits of news and various podcasts and things that I end up doing. So that's a great way to stay connected. Don't worry, it's not spammy, it's not over the top. It's just once a month you'll get an email. But yeah, that's the best place to go. My website, there's lots of pictures from all of my adventures and challenges and everything. So you'll be able to see all of that. But that's the best place because it's linked to everything. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been great being here.